Hey everyone, going to take a look at a couple articles here. It's actually two parts of one article idea written by Kenzie Jennings. So I'm going to bring that up on the screen first. This on purpose, this comma on purpose, is the site. I'm not familiar with it. This is the first time I've come across it or any of the works. It appears that multiple authors write for this particular site, and Kenzie's or Jennings' story is very, very good. Before we look at the two parts of the same article, I wanted to take a look at her Amazon page. She's been in a couple anthologies. Reception there is her first novel release, and then her second novel release is a huge one here, Red Station. It's part of Deathhead Press's Splatter Westerns, and it's the seventh book. The other books in that series, each one written by a different author, takes the Wild West and includes sort of weird western or extreme horror or splatterpunk, hence the splatter in the title. And all those books have been excellent. They are by very strong authors doing their very, very best work. So I've been wildly impressed. I still need to pick up Kenzie Jennings' latest edition in that. But that's impressive. That Red Station and part of the Splatterpunk Westerns being the second novel, as far as I can tell here, is huge and is a real testament to her writing. Now, all that being said, what I'm looking at today is This Is on Purpose, the website, but Things I've Learned as an Author Part 1, and then we'll go immediately into Part 2. And I'll share that link in the chat as we go along here. All right, so beginning with Kenzie Jennings' article. There's a writing memoir trend happening right now among beloved horror authors, Jeff Strand, Tim Wagoner, Brian Keene, and I'm enjoying every bit of it. I've read each of those. Jeff Strand's is very good. Tim Wagoner's is excellent. I actually recommended that one in my 10 creative writing books for the end of the year here. And Brian Keene has done a couple memoirs that are excellent as well, so I agree with those recommendations. Because I was never an it girl, as I was always taking up the trend rather than being a trendsetter, I'm going to embrace the follower in me, since she refuses to die, and do the same as my sage, experienced contemporaries. The primary difference is, obviously, I'm a relative newcomer to the horror writing world, so what I say is solely based on the past couple years rather than decades worth of experience. What I hope, however, is that I can help someone who is currently on the same path now as a newcomer. Therefore, specifically, with them in mind, I've titled this piece, Things I've Learned as a New Author. All right, so we'll go through. I'm not highly critical, so I don't imagine that I'm going to be arguing with much of what she's saying here, but I'll give my 2 cents as we go through. So from her perspective, she considers herself fairly early on. Showed you the couple books that she has out, and the second one is a pretty impressive is in pretty impressive company. So it kind of speaks towards how well she's doing in what she considers the beginning of her career. But her first suggestion, social media is your friend and your enemy. Tread carefully. Just on the title alone, I agree. How can you possibly have a creative life in the 21st century if you don't have some sort of social media presence? I know for authors it establishes a connection to others in the writing community. I owe another creative, someone I've known since I was a toddler, for my introduction to social media, and he always managed to get me to sign on whatever platform was the next big thing. I owe yet another creative, author Jeff Strand, whom I initially met on social media, my horror writing career path. I don't think I need to go into details about how social media is the cheapest form of marketing for your work too, since that goes without saying. Another plus. You'll also meet other authors, editors, cover designers, publishers, and readers from all over the world. What could possibly be so wrong about that? I do agree with all that. If you use social media wisely, you can make some good connections. In terms of readers, that's kind of a mixed bag. It's hard to just post books and things of that nature, and gain very many readers. But once you have readers, they can connect with you on there, and you can possibly retain them as readers for your new works as you come along. Well, we know perfectly well by now that social media has its problems. It's not social media itself that's the issue when it comes to those creative connections. When it's used as a tool to do terrible things, obviously, it's problematic. Be careful how you interact with others. Be professional, too. You're working, after all. If you use social media as a free-for-all for yourself, hell, honey child, it's your profile. You may certainly do what you want, say what you want, project yourself as whatever you want. However, remember, someone somewhere is taking screenshots of some of the awful stuff you may be posting. Your social media profile should represent the best of you, not the worst of you. Keep that other stuff private. I do know some authors that would push back against that, but I would say generally that's as true as it can be. You don't really help yourself. It really doesn't matter what your profession is. You don't really help yourself much by showing the worst of yourself or using it as a combat zone, and you don't come away feeling healthier. So I know a lot of authors recently who have dumped one social media platform or another. Some have left Facebook, some have left Twitter. But in both of those circumstances, I think if you curate your social media experience, and that can mean getting rid of some toxic people, but it can also mean not being toxic, being on there and using it the way you want to use it. As I did an experiment with Twitter, and I'm still doing it occasionally, where I'll just go through and recommend books to people who are looking for book recommendations. And as I did that, I got connected with a lot more people who are into reading like I am. And my social media experience there is much more positive than a lot of people experience on Twitter. And you can do similar things by just deciding that what you're putting out there is going to be what you want to get back. Number 2, Jennings says, if someone in the know offers you advice, it doesn't hurt to take it. Now, I would caveat that. I'm always cautious with advice. I try not to give it without caution. And then I'm careful about who I take advice from. I have some rules about that. I don't take advice from people who don't like me. I don't take advice from people who don't like what I do. And I don't take advice from people who have no concern about my future success. So sometimes people's advice is basically scolding or lecturing. And if it's coming from a place where they don't like me, they don't like what I do, and they don't care about my success, then I'm cautious about taking career advice from them, because they don't really, they don't always have my best interests at heart. So sometimes that advice comes from a place of, if I'm trying to use Twitch as an author platform, or if I'm self-publishing and they hate self-publishing, then their advice to dump self-publishing and try to go a traditional route is a little more self-serving and not really in my best interest as an author trying to come up in the current age instead of one that's past. But again, if you are getting advice from people who care about you and you're not at least considering it, then you probably have a problem. And especially as a new author, a lot of times they can people that again care about you and your success can give you some pointers that'll help you learn the ropes a little faster, instead of writing a number of terrible stories and then realizing something that you're doing wrong over and over. Let's see what she has to say about it. Pay attention to them, learn from them, listen to them. There's a story there too, I guarantee it, and you won't want to miss that. If I had closed myself off to advice, I would have never gone to KillerCon and met my publisher, which would have made my publishing journey a lot longer. Okay, so that's very good advice, and KillerCon is a great convention. So whoever guided her that direction was giving her good advice. Number 3, speaking of KillerCon, if you have the time and extra bucks, invest in a trip to a writers' convention, obviously after the pandemic has fizzled. This may be good too. Again, there's some cost there, and it kind of depends on what your goals are too, but generally I would say you gain a lot from conventions, sometimes networking, sometimes just finding kindred spirits, refueling yourself, sometimes picking up readers as you sell books and stuff too. A convention is your chance to meet authors and publishers and talk to them one-on-one. I hate using the word networking because it sounds so cold and corporate. A writer's conference is generally warm and inviting. A good one will inspire and invigorate you. There are some very bad ones out there. The smaller the convention, obviously, the more likely you'll get to actually hang out with the people you admire. If you're an introvert like me, I'm not going to lie, it will seem daunting at first, and the butterflies never really go away. That said, plenty of authors are introverts too, feeling the exact same way you are. You know this, though. We're in a lonely profession where sometimes the only company around is living in our heads. I have this problem where I tend to make an ass of myself in front of people I admire, but now that I've seen them interacting with others, I've also seen they have their own quirks and insecurities as well. I won't sugarcoat it, though. There are going to be moments where you'll meet someone whose work you enjoy and admire, and that person will disappoint you when you meet him or her. It happened to me, but for every one of those particular authors who's ignored you, there are several more who are as interested in you as you are with them. Stick with them. Your world will become so much more exciting with them in it. Trust me, that's a good one too. All right, number 4, envy is a bitch. Stay away from bitches. All right. Never compare yourself to someone else. Their success has nothing to do with your own success. That's good. It really doesn't. I realize envy is one of the greatest flaws of the human condition, but if you let it take control, it will cut a hole in you and fill it with acid. I know it's hard to shake that curdling, awful feeling. Believe me, I do. I get a twinge of envy every so often, but the feeling subsides when I remind myself that this is not my path. There's a little mind trick I taught myself years ago back when I was an amateur performer. I always thought acting was a lot of fun. How often is it you get to pretend to be someone else in front of an audience and not get arrested for identity theft? Anyway, during my first few years here in Central Florida, I was involved in a large local improv group, and I did some community theater. It was a great way to creatively cut loose and meet some wonderful people who enjoyed what I did. At some point, though, it grew difficult for me, and envy seemed to be the common culprit. It dawned on me that I'd been handling envy the wrong way when a good friend of mine, whom I met at an audition, said to me that when we'd first met, she'd been aiming for the part that I would be getting. However, the director had seen something different in her, so he gave her a key role that turned out to be perfect for her. A role, I might add, that was wonderfully memorable because of what she'd brought to the character. That's when I realized that what had been right for me hadn't been right for her, and what had been right for her hadn't been right for me. Subsequently, that became my approach to envy. Envy only enters the picture when we compare ourselves to others who are not like us. And when we want what they have, it often makes little to no sense because what they have isn't necessarily what is right for us in the moment. So when it comes to envy of other authors' success, ask yourself if what you have is what's actually right for you too. More than likely, A, it may not be your time just yet. B, it may be an entirely different genre or subgenre than what you're writing. C, it may be a particular trend that publishers are looking for in the moment. D, it might just be the wrong publisher and or agent altogether. If you are persistent and hardworking at your craft, your time will definitely come. It will just don't let someone else's success determine your own. And that's great advice. And also, you got to watch out for it when you have successes. You share your successes. Not everybody who pipes up about how great it is for you is actually happy for you. So always kind of be careful of that. All right, number 5, watch how you handle negative reviews. Okay, this is probably very good. You should just never respond to reviews either way, positive or negative, really. But responding to negative reviews is a problem. Also, authors don't see the positives in negative reviews. A negative review will actually counterintuitively sell more books than a positive review. And the reason is because typically people click if people check as much as 2 reviews on a book before they think about buying it, they're probably going to check one of the 5 stars, and they're going to check the lowest review they can find. The 5 star is going to be glowing, but that could be your mom or your cousin, and they don't know. If someone gives a 1-star review or a low review, then people kind of figure, okay, this is not a friend of the author. And a lot of times, depending on what the review says, it may actually sell the book, because a person looking at a book wants to like it. And so they kind of have a natural tendency to look for the flaws in the negative review. They don't necessarily want to believe it. Every product we've ever bought probably had, most of them anyway, probably had a negative review of some kind, and we found a way to dismiss that when we looked at it. And it's like, well, they were being unreasonable, or whatever it is. For instance, if you look at a negative review and it says there's too much sex and violence in this book, that review is going to sell a lot of books, and it's because people may be coming to the story looking for something more racy, or something that has deeper horror. If someone says the story was too scary, or if someone says I don't like zombies, and it's a zombie book, you can say, well, they shouldn't have looked at the book. Why are they pulling my reviews down? But the moment somebody who's looking for a zombie book sees that somebody said, I give this 1 star because I don't like zombies, they're going to say, well, this person's an idiot. Why did they buy a book that's clearly about zombies, and then get mad because they don't like zombies? And someone's going to buy up that book in a moment. A friend of mine had a book with the word shed in the title, and had a negative review that said, I bought this shed and I put it up, and it was terrible. It didn't work. And he went to all the trouble to call Amazon and get them to take the review down. And the person he talked to thought it was funny, because obviously the person had bought like a metal shed from somewhere, and then it come on to this book, and it just clicked on the first thing they saw and gave a negative review. I found this out later, and I was like, you should have left that review on, because can you imagine the number of people that pick up that horror book and they look at the positive reviews and they're like, great, so they go to the 1-star review and it's some guy who's mad because he bought a shed, and he talks about how the instructions weren't good and all that stuff. I said, you would have sold so many books from people that just thought that was funny and then bought the book anyway. So negative reviews will sell a lot of books. All right, that's a big tangent there, but let's see what Jennings had to say about responding to negative reviews, because you do need to not show that you're thin-skinned, and that you have a bad attitude when someone just happens to not like your book. Even if they have a bad attitude, as the author, you got to be professional. All right, she says, I said this once in a response to a post in a Facebook writing group, and I stand by it. When dealing with negative reviews, take what you can from them and shrug off what you don't. Your writing isn't for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. You know yourself and you know your audience. That's what matters. Now, there is some merit to that, in the sense of, like, if it says there's grammar mistakes, editing mistakes in this book, then you should always have a professional editor looking over your work, whether you're self-published or not. But it may be a sign you need to look at different editors. It may be like, those are kind of mechanical things that are like, okay, I should probably deal with that. But I wouldn't change my writing style based on a review that they didn't like or something like that. So I don't know that reviews are necessarily the best place to gauge your writing. I guess you can look at them and see what's constructive, but generally speaking, I would not use reviews as a guidepost in how to write your stuff. Every author I've interacted with seems to have different ways in how they handle negative reviews. Okay, I think I just demonstrated that for her. Some read them for critical content they think may help them. Some vent about them to their friends. Some binge eat everything in sight until they fall into a food coma. Some turn them into comedy gold, and so on and so on. I have a few friends who don't read reviews at all. They never look at them. And I had one author who said that reviews are not for authors, they're for other readers, and that's valid. And then I have another author friend who's quite successful, who says he never looks at reviews, good or bad, because it gets up into his head and it affects how he goes forward, and so it's not a positive for him. And I think and she's made an excellent point here about everybody handles them differently. One piece of crucial advice they share in common, though, is they all agree that you should never directly respond to negative reviews and to the reviewers who write them. That is 100% true. For the most part, reviewers aren't writing for you, they're writing for other readers. Exactly. When you insert yourself into it, you're going to alienate reviewers and the readers they're writing for. They're not going to want to read anything of yours again. That may sound ideal to you, but from what I've learned, writing communities are pretty small. The horror writing community in particular is smaller than one might think. I really do wish it was bigger. Sooner or later, word will get around that you got ugly with a reviewer on a blog, on Goodreads, in a Facebook group, somewhere anyway, and your reputation will go down the toilet. So do not engage. That is perfect advice. She sounds like a veteran here. All right, number 6, you're only as good as your next project. All right, let's see what she has to say about that. You will always be asked what you're working on next. That is true. So you should be working on something new, moving forward, not backwards. Very good. As I write this, I've a set of Post-it notes. I'm nuts with Post-it notes. I got them all over my desk here. I got them all over the desk over there. I got a dry erase board that I keep like projects and stuff on, and my goal was to move away from the Post-it mess. So I have far fewer Post-its. I used to have them all over my screens, but I have not cured myself of the Post-it problem. So I keep a calendar online, and I use Trello for organization too, but I still have a ton of Post-its of what I'm doing each day in physical form as well. So I have a nutso Post-it problem. I actually had Post-its Twitter address talk to me when I posted about a picture of what I was doing with Post-its. So I didn't get a sponsorship out of it, but they said that whatever works for me is fine in how I use their product. I think I'm helping keep them in business for sure. So she says, as I write this, I have a set of Post-it notes ready to line my wall with scene revisions for my WIP, work in progress, a seedy little thriller that's been a fun but long chaotic ride. And I have another document open, the beginning of a short story that's been torturing my psyche to get out. However, I find it hard to keep from worrying about the state of my published work, especially the most recent project and its potential readership. I confess I spend too much time honing in on a previous project and lose track of what I ought to be concentrating on, so I have to keep reminding myself that my debut novel Reception was a project that kept me from solely focusing on what was happening to my previous novel that was supposed to be my debut. Okay, so she has another book that apparently I haven't seen yet, a novel that is now in limbo, and I really don't mind that it is because I've moved forward. In other words, current projects are the healthier distractions. Again, forward, not backwards, my friend. Okay, so that's there's a lot to that. All right, so this article was the part 1 of her things I've learned as a new author. And now we will look at part 2. I'll share that link in just a moment. All right, so we'll get on down to where we were. Again, the next article is just about the same link. The date's a little different, and it's part 2 instead of part 1. Yesterday's list of things I've learned as a new author seemed to go over quite nicely, but I saved the more controversial things I've learned for today's post, part 2. You can love it or leave it or mull it over for a bit before giving up entirely on me. I was one of the people who responded well to that first article and shared it. Several other people did too. She got some good likes and shares and things like that on the articles because I think she did a good job. So very happy for her for that. And this is also a site that I may need to keep an eye on because it looks like other authors are sharing things on here as well. All right, and so we continue the numbered list. Number 7, no one wants to hear about your book unless they've asked about your book. Now I know for the most part we're in charge of pitching and later much of our marketing advertising for our new book. That said, the only person who's totally interested in your book is you until you've a reader base. Even if you have readers for your work, though, the book isn't as important as you are as a human being. Connect with people as people do. Stop making it all about your work. No one gives a shit about it until they do on their own timeline. Often you're selling yourself more than you are the book. So people kind of have to buy into you when they're interacting with you. Again, I'm not trying to say don't advertise your work, but I've seen authors who've done nothing but plug their work over and over and over again and do nothing else. In fact, mere minutes ago, I received a friend request from an author, and his Facebook page, I already know where this is going, is nothing but posts about his book. Quite, guess who's declined his friend request? I mean, he doesn't really want to be friends with me if he thinks I'm buying his book when I have 50 or so books in my to-be-read pile. I don't read for pleasure much during the regular school term. He's nuts. No, baby. All right, she's a professor of English. Also, I saw that in her. I know her and I've met her, but I saw that in her Amazon bio we were looking at just a moment ago. All right, number 8. You are never too young or too old to start a writing career. That's 100% correct. Even before I read what she has to say, I started this journey officially as a published novelist at 46. I'll be frank, it's been hard for me to feel absolutely at ease in the horror writing community as a middle-aged woman. It's totally an internal thing caused by no one but my own insecurities. I'm glad to hear no one's made her feel unwelcome. I'm getting there, though. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has been gracious and kind and warm and welcoming. I've had an iffy moment or two with a couple of authors, see yesterday's post number 3, but they weren't the norm whatsoever. So if I can jumpstart a career like this in my late 40s, think what you can do too. First time I was paid for something was 2010. I was in my 30s then, and I'm 46 now. I went full-time in 2013. So I was a little later than some as well. So you just kind of start when you start. Number 9, know your limits. Say yes only to the opportunities that you know you'll be able to do. People should say no to more things in writing, just because not everything is on your path, and then not everything will fit into your time frame. So you can destroy some of the things that you want to get done because you spend time saying yes to everything everybody else wants you to do. I'm often in awe of authors who take on a lot more than I could ever possibly imagine doing myself, project after project after project, followed by another project and a small one on the side. I have come to accept the fact that I simply cannot handle multiple major projects, especially during a busy semester. I teach freshman composition at a community college, in case you were curious. By the end of the semester, I'm so mentally exhausted, I have to have a week where I don't read or write much of anything just to decompress. I've talked a good bit about writer burnout and having planning time off so that you're not burnt out all the time. Then instead of plunging into one of my big projects or whips, whatever it is I'm working on, I start small. This blog entry, for example, is a nice bridge that gets me into the practice once again, easing me into it. It works for me. Do whatever works for you. However, don't ever assume you're obliged to do everything that comes your way. If you can't, you can't, and that's okay. Remember, don't compare yourself to your peers. Know your limits. That is good advice. I will say that if there's an opportunity that scares you and you're passing on it not because you don't have the time but because you're afraid, then I think in those cases you may need to consider saying yes to more things. But broadly speaking, we should say no to more things, not just in the writing world, but lots of things that kind of take our time. They may be good things to do, they may be helping people, but you don't have to be the one to save everybody. So every single time someone asks you for something, you don't have to agree to it. Now, I do think it's good for us to be there for friends and family. So when people ask for help and you can help, it's good to do so. But you can fill up your entire day with other people's things to do and never be able to do anything that you are truly meant to be doing. Right, number 10, adapt or die. Here we go, the controversial bit. It's not really as bad as it sounds, but I had to get your attention somehow with this one. Your job as a writer who wants a readership is to write for those readers. Yeah, okay, you're writing for yourself, you're writing for what you want to read, yada yada, but let's be real. You want readers, that's why you're in this business. But here's the thing, you better be cognizant of what is acceptable and what isn't in the 21st century. Here's the thing, you better be cognizant of what is acceptable and what isn't in the 21st century. We are not living in the Mad Men universe where things like sexual harassment and racism, are insidious socio-cultural norms. If you can't stand the thought of contemporary norms infringing on your right to be a disgusting piece of shit, then you want to flaunt your defiance. Be prepared to watch your career die. Don't believe me? I've been a part of the horror community for only 2 years, maybe a bit less, and in that time, I've already seen people in the community utterly self-destruct their careers due to their dirtbag behavior. One went on a frothing racist rant. I think she has links here, but I'm not going to pull that up. And the others were revealed to be sexual harassers. I don't know why they thought they were going to get away with any of it, since this is also the age of screenshots. A part of me thinks they wanted to be caught, like it was some sort of weird masochistic pull or something. I don't get it. Some of my students do that sort of thing where they think they're not going to get caught plagiarizing, but they can't possibly think that because we've technology that catches it instantly. They quickly learn, though, it's an automatic 0, and then they have to take the course again. Again, it has to be a sort of masochism. They cannot possibly be that dense to think no one will catch them. I think some people are that dense. But I digress. The point is, you have to be a better human than that. Adapt to the modern world or watch your career go down in flames. Alright, number 11, I believe this may be the last one. Always be gracious and credit everyone involved. I had to be reminded of this one, and I was ashamed of myself for my lack of courtesy. I've learned, though, unless you really did everything yourself, your book, your baby, is an overall community creation. You did the bulk of the work in writing it, and it's your original story premise. But if you're working with a traditional publisher, or you're commissioning editors, cover artists, formatters, etc., as a self-publisher, you've a team that's working with you to make the book into something truly special. Thank all of them and acknowledge them. Even better, point others in their direction, helping them with their business too. That's all I wanted to share with you, my fellow new authors, for now anyway. In time, I'm sure I'll have more to add to this list. Until then, keep at it. Always keep at it.